Anyway, Kirk Irby is here from Lowell's Pharmacy, and still to come this hour, we'll have our library chat. Linda Stevens will be in. But I do want to ask Kirk, we were talking about the masks and the COVID, are we done with COVID thing? Let me ask you this. You were talking about how the various different mutations or different strains of COVID-19, have been less and less from a health impact standpoint.
Yes.
The alpha variant, the beta, or as they say in Britain, the beta variant, the delta variant.
Yes.
All were, depending on your comorbidities and your health situation, pretty bad for some folks.
Yes, they were.
A lot of folks got really sick. Some folks died from complications that came from getting sick from COVID. Omicron less so, and then you said some of these other variants that are popping up are even less than that. That's what you're seeing.
Yes.
But the flu, which is a virus, it's a different virus.
Correct.
The flu, you never read about the subsequent strains of flu or the variants or mutations of the flu being less flu-like than the previous. And every year, the medical experts take their best guess at what strains are going to be going around the world when they develop the flu shots. So I guess it's a function of the difference between the two viruses, why one is reducing itself. I'm thinking of Star Trek terms, or
yes,
or what was the movie, Independence Day?
Okay.
Versus the flu virus. What's the differences there? Why does it seem to be that?
That part I don't have a good answer for, other than Omicron is still, or the COVID family, so to speak, is still fairly new, and the influenza virus has been around for centuries. And I am thinking, just kind of knowing what I know about diseases and the viruses and kind of what we know about the history of them, I would suspect that sometime in the future we may get a variant of the COVID that is maybe this time more potent than a previous version. And it's kind of like the influenza virus. There's, as you go on, every now and then you'll get a swine flu pop up or a bird flu variant or something along that lines that is a little bit more potent than the rest of them. But that was kind of one thing that I was a little frustrated about during this last couple of years, is that the CDC has still been reporting deaths due to the flu disease, but nobody's been picked up on that or reported on it. And it's my understanding that there were more deaths from flu than there were from COVID. Of course, there are some of those that they're like two overlapping circles, that there were some people that had both, but just the raw numbers of flu versus COVID, I believe that flu still out-killed, so to speak, what COVID did. But it's just that COVID was so new and scary. It's like the difference between surviving a tornado and surviving a thunderstorm. The tornadoes are very devastating, but they're very small area of what they impact. Well, a thunderstorm covers a lot of different areas. So that's kind of my thinking of this, and it's a lot of it has to do with the reporting that's being done.
Yeah, you wish everybody would just report as much information as possible so people could make an informed decision. Well, let me ask you this. The flu, there's a formulation every year for the flu shot because the medical professionals look across the world and they see what strains of flu
Correct.
potentially will be the dominant strains, and most of the time they get pretty close to
They do.
to what the different strains are. As far as COVID is concerned, are the vaccines that still continue to be pushed today, Are they still the vaccines that were primarily formulated to deal with like the alpha and the beta and the delta variant, and not so much the Omicron variant?
They are, but also I do need to say that it still appears that the vaccines are very good against Omicron too.
Okay.
So they're good against the whole spectrum. But yes, they were primarily developed against the alpha, beta variants, because that's what was out when these were being developed.
But there's still some effectiveness for the Omicron variants.
Correct.
from the vaccines. If Omicron or if COVID-19 is still going to be around and with us on into the future, do you see them dropping the term vaccine and calling them COVID shots, kind of like we call the flu shot? And do you see those being modified somewhat each year, depending on which versions of the COVID-19 they expect would be the prominent or dominant ones in a particular cycle?
I see that is a distinct possibility. It's kind of hard to look into the future, but so far with the COVID vaccine or COVID shot, I do see they may drop the terminology vaccine in the near future and just call it the COVID shot. But so far, and from what I have been able to determine, it's going to be good against all the different strains. Now, we may get one point where a strain may be so far modified from the original that it is starting to make its own separate category, of which then you might need 2 COVID shots, or a COVID shot that has 2 different components to it. Kind of like the flu shot nowadays has 4 components. It used to be 3, then they added another one, and for about 3 or 4 years, you could get a tri or a quad version of the flu shot, and pretty much now they all have 4 different components, and they may do that with the COVID shot too in the future.
Yeah, it's all really interesting how this is evolving, if you will, and doing that. And the symptoms that people can suffer are so similar, whether it's a cold or flu or the Omicron COVID,
Yes.
aren't they? I mean, that people come into the pharmacy or people go to their doctors. Sometimes it's not real obvious which which it is that they're suffering from, is it?
That's correct, and that they'll a lot of times they'll need to run a rapid flu type test to see if it is flu or not, and then that kind of helps the physician or prescriber to hone in on what is actually causing the illness and prescribe appropriately, instead of more of what we kind of consider the shotgun effect of prescribing about 3 or 4 different drugs to cover everything. So it helps focus in on things a little bit better. But yes, the symptoms are very similar, and it is hard to determine sometimes. And there are some there are some COVID viruses that are not the COVID-19 that are part of the viruses that can cause the kind of seasonal cold type symptoms, and that's why they have seen some people with some natural immunity out there before they ever started doing the vaccines. They think that some of these other COVID viruses have given some natural immunity, but you generally see those more in Europe and the Middle East than you do here, but you get some of them here too. You get people that are traveling the world too.
Yeah. You know, there was a little bit of scare, and I'm sure it's still of concern, in the war in Ukraine. The Russians attacked a nuclear power facility, and then all of a sudden people started running around trying to find iodine tablets and stuff like that. That's always a scary concern, because we saw what happened in Ukraine
Yes.
at Chernobyl years ago in the 80s. That's just a scary thought, to think that something crazy might happen there, and what
It
would
is.
happen when that gets up into the atmosphere, and can that travel around the world? I mean, stuff that happened at Fukushima, stuff that happened at Chernobyl, I'm sure there were, while it was very, very minute, traces of that kind of came across the oceans and affected the United States. I'm not trying to start a panic or say we need to be worrying about that kind of stuff, but that's just another thing to add to the list of things that, oh my gosh, that could happen now.
It could. And, just like within the last year, I saw like a kind of documentary on the Chernobyl accident, and what the Russians came in and did to encapsulate that reactor, because it was still hot at the time. I think it still is.
Oh, yeah.
Hot. It's just been so encapsulated with concrete and metal that there is no radiation leaking out from it. But and kind of interesting, that was one of the first targets that the Russian infantry
was that area.
was that area, and now they're shelling this other nuclear plant, and what I read was it was the largest nuclear plant in Europe. So, and it was in this other Ukrainian city, and it's kind of boggles my mind that the Russians want to attack that facility, shell it. I think they would want to take it intact, but they would want to do more precise attacking.
Yeah, well,
than
they are the Russians.
They are. So
I don't know, and then your mind starts to wander, and you go, so what happens if, however minute it is, if you get a little bit of nuclear radioactivity release, and how would it interact with Omicron? And
you could wonder about that. So
it's like, oh gosh, this world is just getting crazy out there. What do people seem to be? Let's kind of reel it back in from that. What do people seem to be affected by most nowadays? Because I go places and I hear people sniffling and sneezing, and we got some coughing and hacking, and it used to be like a year ago, oh, COVID, get out of here, But what is it? Are we seeing some seasonal allergies? What are some of the things that people are being impacted by right now?
there are some seasonal allergies as we're starting to warm up again, and we're supposed to be in the 80s, I guess, today or tomorrow.
Yeah.
So as we warm up, there are seasonal allergies, and that causes people to have some of those symptoms. We're seeing a fair amount of antibiotic use right now, not so much the antiviral. So I'm thinking there are some minor bacterial outbreak type things that are going on out there that are kind of minor, but some people need an antibiotic. Some people just need to get, some antihistamines to help kind of dry up the nose and that type of stuff. And some of them are allergies. So we're seeing an increased number of antihistamine prescriptions, and also just doctors sending notes with patients, get this antihistamine that's over the counter.
Yeah. Sometimes, depending on what you have, steroids or something with a steroid effect is prescribed.
Yes.
What's the benefit of the steroids? What are the steroids generally attempting to do when those are prescribed?
Generally, if you have, especially up in the sinuses, and it doesn't matter if it's a sinus infection or allergies, you get that kind of swelling of those tissues in the sinuses, and steroids will help reduce that. And as those sinus tissues are kind of swelling, they will also produce some extra fluid. That's where that kind of runny nose or kind of that feeling of fluid kind of down the back of the throat. You can maybe get a raw throat from drainage. Antihistamines tend to help dry that up, but the steroids will help kind of reverse that reaction, and will also help dry those up, just because that inflammation process is what produces that extra fluid.
And then are vitamin supplements still a good thing? I know that got a lot of talk, as long as Trump didn't say it.
That's true.
If Trump had come out and said, we need everybody to be taking vitamin D, then for the next 6 months we would have heard about vitamin D doesn't have any impact at all. It means nothing. It's a waste of time. Trump's an idiot. Fortunately, he did not say anything about vitamin D, and I know that was something that a lot of people talked about with the previous strains of COVID. But what are good supplements or good vitamins that people should consider depending on the situation that they're in?
And generally speaking, a good multiple vitamin is going to have the whole spectrum of what most people are going to need, and those generally do have a little bit of extra D. They'll have some zinc. If you get plain multiple vitamins, and sometimes they'll say with minerals, and that zinc is a mineral. Sometimes vitamins have those extra minerals in them, but they don't say it on the label. So that's when you gotta turn that side of that container over and look at the list of vitamins and minerals that are in there. But generally speaking, a good multiple vitamin is going to be all that you need. Some people don't want to get the shotgun effect, so to speak, of getting everything. So it kind of depends on every person's diet and what they do. If you get outside, you're going to get some vitamin D because your body converts vitamin D from sunlight, ultraviolet light, essentially. But so if you're inside all the time and you're maybe eating fast food, you're not getting a good healthy diet, I think a good multiple vitamin would help that across the board. If you're eating a lot of meat and you're not getting that much vegetables stuff, something like vitamin C is good for your immune system, and that is fruits and fresh vegetables. So and then a lot of times if you're more of a vegetarian type diet, whether you're and some vegetarians don't do well getting iron and some of those other things that you do get from meat, so they need to supplement with that type of thing. So it kind of depends on your diet, what you're intaking, and how active you are. If you're getting out, if you're just walking from the front door to your car and then getting in that, and then from your car to your business, maybe you're a mother that is not working and you're staying home with kids, and you may not get outside every day. So that just kind of depends on your lifestyle, what you're doing, of what you need. But generally speaking, one good multiple vitamin a day is a very good recommendation.
There's more benefits to that than
yes.
than that. Anything else that you wanted to share with us today?
Not really at this point. Just I had read that about the kids and the mask and why they were being developmentally delayed.
Yeah, and it makes sense because I was when he was telling the story, I thought, well, kids that age generally haven't been masked or vaxxed, but it's the parents or the grandparents or the adults
watching. And that was one thing that the CDC and these researchers were caught off guard. They really did not think that there was a lot of lip reading, so to speak, by learning by doing that. So and these kids, because even your strictest mask mandates, they say kids 2 and yet less don't need to wear the mask. but they're the ones that are suffering because they're not being able to see, and it could be that they're not hearing clearly what is coming through the mask. So
That's true. That's true. So the solution is not to get the masks off. The solution is to lower the word count.
that's what the government has done.
Thank you. Thank you, government. All right, Kirk, thank you for coming in. Appreciate it.
Sure.
Always learn things when you come by. Have some McDonald's. There's plenty there for you.
All right. Thank you.
And we'll see you here next time.
All right.